So what other kind of things had you been doing over these years? You've been traveling maybe with the kids, like on summers. What would you guys do for...
Well, we would always go on vacation. We'd hook up our little trailer, which was kind of just a very tiny piece, but we all crammed into it, and we would travel north. Everything was cash. We didn't have a credit card. So you planned ahead of time, and my wife, Consuelo, would make a lot of the stuff that we're going to eat, and we had plenty of pancake mix and so forth, and so a lot of that was for our breakfast and a lot of our sandwiches and so forth. I didn't teach summer classes. We just invested them in the family traveling, and I'm sure that I put their life in danger several times because Rosemary always remember we're crossing this river. It wasn't a river, it was a pretty heavy, not a deep river, but so I put a rope around all of us and we crossed. I guess I figured if Cortez goes, everybody goes.
You're not the world's strongest swimmer, is my recollection.
I don't swim, yeah.
Yeah.
But it wasn't that deep. Everybody followed, oh God. In those days, it was legal to have your kids in the trailer. And I got stopped by a highway patrolman in Oakland, and we were headed up north on our summer vacation. And the officer says, I thought, gee, we may have got some violation. He said, no, I thought I'd see you have your children in the car. Why don't you put them in the trailer? I said, well, is that? No, I do that all the time. That's legal. So we immediately opened the door, put the kids in the trailer, and boy, were they tickled to death. We were not thinking of, if I make a sudden stop or anything happen, these kids through the window of the trailer into the...
But you and Connie finally had some peace and quiet.
But we thought that was... And the kids were delighted.
I bet they were.
They're playing games and they're eating and... Well, isn't that something?
Yeah.
And it wasn't illegal. It was okay to have your kids wandering around in the trailer. But the kids loved it. Oh, they thought that was the greatest thing.
Now, at one point during your college teaching years, you were on the draft board, right?
Yes, that was in the 60s. Almost all the members, I was a veteran, of course. I'd been in the service. Most of the members on the board were retired lieutenants or career military, not like me. So a lot of them thought students that put in a deferment because of their college, and they had good records, good. The first thing I'd review is their records. They were carrying their grades, and I would say, no, I think this guy's got a legitimate. And of course, a lot of them thought, I think that guy's shirking his duty,
Right.
So I wasn't the most popular guy on the board, but I defended these guys. Now, if the guy had kind of a skimpy record, a lot of absences, I wouldn't support them.
Right, but coming from your education background,
yeah,
it's kind of easy to sniff that out.
Yeah. So the Vietnam thing was really
This was 68, 69?
Yeah, even before then. So I made a good contribution, I felt, for a lot of students.
What about when you and Connie traveled to Europe?
Oh.
What year was that?
One year we went to, she had a nephew that was in the military that was stationed in Frankfurt. So we went to Frankfurt and visited with them. We also flew over to London, spent a week there, and then flew back to Frankfurt, rented the vehicle, and went to France and visited my friend's grave. Then we went to Rome and we went to Florence. And from Florence, we continued driving on up into the Pyrenees, into Spain, drove down into Barcelona. And we'd stop along the way, but in Barcelona, we spent some time, and then from there, we went to the village where my parents came from, in Almeria. I wanted to go to the village where my parents were born, so there were 3 villages. And we came into this Almeria, this province, and it was up off the mountain down into a sort of a big valley below. And in this valley, there were three villages. So I said, well, let's find out where my mother was born. We just made a right in one village, and here we're driving down. It was all dirt and gravel, but we're driving down, and here we come to this house, and there's a front yard, and there's a young man in the front yard. So I stop and I said, "Oh, joven," and I asked him, "We're looking for a family of Maria Encarnacion Cortez, Cortez, and we're trying to find where, if this was a." And the young man, he said, "No, esta es la casa." He says, "This is the house." I said, maybe I didn't make myself clear enough. No, mi madre, my mother, was born here. No, esta es la casa. There's 3 villages, 1 house, and we stopped. So anyhow, he invited us in, and they were related. They took us upstairs and showed us the loom where my mother would weave blankets. It was dilapidated. It was no longer an operation, right. But the strings were there, and I said, "Is this unbelievable?" Yeah. So then, of course, we stayed at that village. One of the relatives had a house there that we stayed in, and of all places to get a flat tire on the car, I got it in the village.
Of course.
But anyhow, that was a great experience.
Yeah, talk about a remarkable, lucky stop.
Yeah, when the guy, the first thing I thought, I didn't explain myself too well.
Right.
No, estoy buscando la casa de María Encarnación Navarro Cortez. Then he repeats it, "This is the place?" As though I knew how to get there,
Right.
Those are ironies that you can't explain.
That's for sure.
And then, of course, my uncle Horatio, always wore a flat hat with a brim around it, and he was pretty short, practically fit under my wife's arm, But he immediately said, "Come on, Consuelo, one more." He took her, "Let's go." The first thing you want to do is take her to the cantina to have a glass of wine. So we stayed there about 2 or 3 days. What an experience that was. And then Rosemary visited the same village too. I got to know a lot of the family, and distant, of course, but a different way of life. But whatever they had was yours. It was just a wonderful.
You took another trip with Nick one time, right? Not that long ago, actually.
Oh my God.
94?
We went to Spain, yeah.
In Portugal?
We went to Portugal, to Spain, and the highlights of that trip wasn't so much our trip, was while I was there, Nick was hiking, and a guy came up and said, "Yo, kid, do you want to rent a Segway?" I said, "No, I don't know." "Oh, I'll show you how to get on." So I rented a Segway. I'd never ridden one, but he showed me how to get on and off, which I did, and I rented it for a certain amount of time, and I really enjoyed it. But when I came back to return it, "Well, senor, you still have 5 minutes." So being a non-generous person, I'm not going to give that 5 minutes to somebody else. I said, "Well, thank you." So I got back on, and now I felt much more confident, started accelerating a little too fast, and anyhow, to make a long story, flipped it, broke my ankle, and that was the end of my trip.
So Nick comes back from wherever he's been.
Yeah, when he came back, he looked down, I'm laying there on the ground, and he asked me, he said, "Grandpa, what are you doing on a Segway? You're 94 years old." And I said to him, "What do you want me to do, wait till I'm older?" Anyhow, he didn't think that was funny, because he was stuck with me for several weeks till I went to the hospital and went. But at the end of that period of time, Nick was glad to get rid of Grandpa. He left me in Madrid. What he said was, "He's all yours." Yeah, it's funny how you end up annihilate your kids or your grandkids. But it was a beautiful trip. That was on June 20th, 2014. Yeah.
Well, just the family rundown. So there's you and Connie, your 3 kids.
Our oldest daughter, Rosemary, and Vince follows that, and then Anita is the baby. Fortunate we've had a good relationship. We have our ups and downs, but we have the resiliency or the fortitude. No matter what happens, we come back and we start again. So that's a good quality. And I think that we inherited that from my mother and my father. That, hey man, it's not the end of the world. There's tomorrow and you're gonna make it. Did I tell you of, like, when we left the ranch, what my mother said? We just lost the farm in 1934 during the Depression, and we're driving our way on this dirt road. We came to California Avenue in Sunnyvale because a friend of ours had converted a chicken house to a sleeping quarters. So we moved there, and canneries were rampant in the valley. So we had a job right now. My mother had a job, my father had a job, my oldest sister had a job. But my mother said some words that I didn't appreciate at that time. As we were driving away with my 5 sisters in the back seat and me in the front between, my mother says, "Una nueva aventura adelante," a new adventure forward. It was nice. I understood the words, and it probably took me several years before I was able to review that and think, boy, there's courage.
That's right.
There's fortitude. And then I could appreciate it. And to this day, I still look at that and admire that my mom and dad, almost invariably, they would say something like that, and then they know you heard it, but then sit down. Like when my mother said, "Una nueva aventura adelante," they didn't sit there and say, "Here's what it means." But later on, I was able to decipher that code. Hey, yeah, I see. You're going to have bad times. It's your choice. Do you want to sit there and lick your wounds? Or do you want to get up and say, good, let's go. Adelante. Yeah.